Okay, so I was going to do some Megillah, but I was thinking of something meanwhile, and I wanted to talk about it. There are problems in the Jewish community, and some of them touch all of you, whether or not you like it to be that it gets to you. It'll get to you. It'll find its way to you, and I want to mention one of them. Every Jewish holiday has in it an element of reigniting a message from the past. So, for example, on Chanukah, we had a miracle happen to us with oil and fire and candles, so we light oil Chanukiyot, a candle Chanukiyot on Chanukah to commemorate the miracle that was. On Pesach, we eat matzah because that's what our forefathers ate in Egypt. All the holidays have something that connects it to the past. Purim has the same style. There are many things you do on Purim that are meant to remind you of the past. The first and foremost, what do you read on Purim?
Esther's book.
Right, Esther's book, the Megillah, in order to remind you of the story that was then. What else do you do as a sign of the past on Purim?
Eat hamantash and dance and wear costumes.
Very good. So I'm going to get to that in just a second. But none of those are mitzvot. You know that? And none of those are part of the celebration of Purim.
Shalomonic.
Very good. Mishloach manot. You send gifts of food to your friends, to other people. That was done in the times of Esther and Mordechai. You give gifts to the poor. You must give at least 2 poor people a significant sum of money. And that is also something we did back in the day. And the costumes, all of that are actually not universal Jewish traditions. In fact, when the Sephardic community met the Ashkenazi community for the first time in Israel, the Sephardim had no idea that people dressed up on Purim. It was never heard of before. It was unheard of that people dressed up on Purim. It was not the way Purim was observed in half of the Jewish community. But in Europe, this was a thing. Something about being covered and revealed, and there's a lot of depth to that in the story of Purim. Hamantashen, again, Sephardic Jews had no such concept of what is a Hamantash. And so, where I argue those are...
Bless.
I'll tell you at the end. You can say one.
It's an allergy.
Whereas I will argue that Purim does contain all these elements of hamantashen and dancing and dressing up. Those are not the biggest parts of Purim. They're in order to put you in the happy, joyous spirit of Purim, and different reasons were given for each one. One of the biggest miracles happened to us began at a feast, which is why we have a feast on Purim. You must have a meal on Purim day that is a festive meal, like everywhere else. Most people think that the nighttime of Purim is the main part of Purim. It's not true. The day of Purim is much holier than the night of Purim. And that's why during the day we have a big feast, and most synagogues you're a part of probably hold some big dinner or lunch or something to that effect. That meal of Achashverosh, what was the main highlight of that meal? What did they eat or drink that was very special? The Megillah refers to it as 180 days of wine. Drinking. They drank a lot. And drank so much, they would actually, forgive me for this, but our rabbi says they would eat, and then, you're talking about Achashverosh and his Persian buddies, they would eat and then force themselves to throw up so they could eat more.
Ugh.
They were gluttons. It's what they did.
Pre-anorexic.
But to the...
What year does the Purim story take place
It's a
in?
great question. In the English counterpart?
BC, right?
Let me think. It's maybe like 4,000. Would that make sense?
4000 BC?
No. 2,000 something. Because 376 is over Yesh. So this might, and it's in between the 2 temples. It must be in 2000 something. 2000. I'll tell you one thing. We were exiled at 37 something now?
BC.
Yeah.
So it's not 2000. And Purim was after the first exile?
Purim was right after the first exile. That's how it actually came about.
So 300 BC. So it was before the
Because
Romans.
the
It was
Jews were
before the Romans. It was the Assyrian Empire
Correct. We
that
were
was
supposed to come.
the
The
leader.
Assyrians destroyed the temple. Right. Well, the Babylonians really. The Babylonians destroyed it. We were supposed to be there for 70 years and then come back up. 7 years passed according to the king's calculation, and the Jews weren't redeemed. And that's why they were celebrating. They said, look, the Jews are never going to leave. They ultimately had made a wrong calculation. We did leave. But that's where they messed up with the 70-year counting. If you look into the story of Daniel, which happened the book of Daniel happens right before. He finds a writing on the wall. You know.
Wait, but hold on. Not everybody left. Most people stayed.
Most people stayed.
Sure.
By the Second Temple, most people didn't come back.
Because the Assyrians, Cyrus came in and freed them and said, you can go back home.
Right, well, yeah, Cyrus, and he told them to go home, but the only ones who really went were the poor, the sick, the old, the rest of the like
Everybody else was established.
Right, we're not going back home.
It's like Americans staying here instead of going to Israel in 1960 when it was still a desert. Right.
I can't find the exact date, but I'll
find it for you.
Wonderful.
But I think that's important to know how long this has been going on.
Here, I'll find it for you right here. One second.
Yesterday I read something about Albert Einstein.
Today's his birthday.
Oh, okay, well that's probably why yesterday I read something about Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein was asked what the speed of light is. And he said he didn't know. He said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I don't make it a point to remember things by heart that are easily available in books. That was his statement.
Save my brain space.
Right, I said, I have, my brain is limited and I want to use it for the things that are not written everywhere. So I don't...
Can I tell you a cute story about Albert Einstein?
Sure.
This is really true. My father-in-law grew up in Germany, and his first cousin was a very, very famous man. He invented part of the X-ray machine. And he was very good friends with Albert Einstein, as was his friend Ruth, and I became very, very friendly with Ruth. And one day Ruth and I were sitting in La Jolla in her condo, and she died when she was about 100. And she was going to school. She was a student, and she was sitting with my father-in-law's first cousin, Gustav, Albert Einstein, and herself. The three of them were having lunch together. And the bill came, and they handed it to Einstein. He looked at the bill, said math, and he said, I can't do it, you do it. And he gave it all to Ruth. That's my cute story about Albert.
I have a short, cute story, too, that in his closet he had, tens of suits, and they were all identical because he didn't want to waste any time deciding what he was going to wear.
That's very funny. That's very funny.
This story takes place in about 350 BCE.
What year? I'm sorry?
350 BCE. That's okay. We have napkins.
Wait, give me a napkin.
There you go. Yeah.
So, part of this main feast was wine, drinking of wine. And therefore our rabbis, in instituting how to celebrate this holiday, added a few things. One is you have to read the Megillah twice, once at night and once during the day. The second, you have to give gifts of food, you have to give gifts to the poor, and then you must have a meal, as well as in that meal you must drink wine. Not beer, not vodka, not whiskey, wine. How much wine? Our rabbis say, Ad de lo yada, until you are unable to differentiate ben Baruch Mordechai la'arur Haman, between the blessed Mordechai and the cursed Haman, which at face value really seems like, until you are so drunk that if someone asks you, hey, remember Haman, the good guy? Yeah, we love him, he saved the Jews. That's how much you have to drink. That's what the basic understanding of the Talmud is. Now, the Talmud itself tells a story about two rabbis that tried to drink that much. And one actually got up and killed the other one. It was Rebbe and Rebbe Zera.
Rebbe Zera, yeah.
Yeah, so one of them killed the other one. And when he woke up in the morning after being hungover, he saw his friend dead. He immediately brought him back to life. Again, this is a Talmudic story. Wait for it. He brought him back to life. And, apologize, sorry to have killed you, I'm glad you're back with us. And the next year, he sent an invitation, hey, you want to do a Purim party again? And his friend says, Hashem doesn't perform miracles every year. It's not the same thing. I'm not relying on miracles. Many of our authorities understand this story to tell you that whereas our rabbi's original intention was to drink, at the end of the day, it doesn't work out for most people. And our rabbis back down from that position of drinking because of the dangers that could come out from it. I will not lie to you. There are many Jewish authorities that still hold today that a person must get drunk on Purim. Actually, I could almost go out there and say the mainstream Jewish authorities are of the opinion that one should get drunk on Purim.
first time I went to a Chabad over here, Scripps Ranch Purim thing, what the hell is going on here with these men?
Really?
Oh,
Now, I could tell
and
you.
the schnapps. It wasn't just, they weren't drinking wine.
See, this
they
is the
were
problem.
they were
There are
doing
very
hard
specific
stuff.
ways to fulfill this mitzvah, and wine is the only way to do it if you believe in it. Now, the Mishnah Berurah, written by the Chavetz Chaim, brings down the Meiri. The Meiri is an early French medieval authority. And he says that it can't be that this is what our rabbis wanted from us, because our rabbis would never command us in the commandment of silliness and stupidity. He said, so this can't be what our rabbis wanted. I'll tell you the truth, is last year and the year before, I walked you through all the sources, and the Rambam, and the Shulchan Aruch, and the Torah, and all the different... And I made a pretty convincing argument that today a person should not drink alcohol at all. It's not my point today. It's not what I came here to tell you. It's obvious that a person should not get drunk on Purim. Even if there are 1,000 rabbis that tell you a person should get drunk, you know what? It's one of those mitzvahs that even if it was true, you shouldn't do it. I'll go to hell with you for it. Okay? And it just can't be. It can't be that the way our rabbis would want us to celebrate is in a utter disgusting act of you walk around and I'll tell you one thing. Google, put into your Google browser, Purim in Jerusalem. And the first 100 pictures, that you can do it now. The first 100 pictures that are going to come up for you are of passed out Orthodox Jews and their own vomit laying down on the floor in the middle of the street.
That's disgusting.
And if there's any other reason to not get drunk, aside from it just that it looks terrible to anybody else, that's a good enough
Can I
reason.
ask you a question? Why is it that people have a connotation that Jews don't drink?
Oh, very good. I'll tell you the truth. The truth is that Jews don't drink. That's the truth. The truth. I'll tell you why.
Except on Purim.
I'll tell you why. My grandfather, when he came to Israel, had never in his life heard of people drinking. He came from Yemen. In Yemen, people didn't. You drank kiddush, and it was like I had a friend from Iran. They had to make wine underground because it was illegal to drink in Muslim countries. They don't drink. Who used to buy? How did my friend in Iran? His father had a whole winery in his basement. How did he get away with it? They had religious police, running around looking for people. The religious police were his best customers. They would come buy wine from him, and he would give it to them for free as protection that they wouldn't tell on him.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe it? So they would smuggle out bottles for kiddush on Friday night and Saturday morning. Compare this to Jewry of Russia, where freaking Jews, everybody's drinking vodka all the time. That's the only way you could stay warm in the winter. So the culture of drinking between Europe and the Middle East in general is vastly different. And I'm going to make an argument that I'm not sure I can back up with sources, but it's an argument that I'm going to make anyways. And that is that the Hasidic community is really the ones who streamline drinking into orthodoxy. Lithuanian Jewry, for example, when I was in yeshiva, it's true, when I was in yeshiva, 4 years of high school, the rabbi would make kiddush, and not one boy was allowed to drink from the wine of kiddush. It's against the law. 21 years old is when you drink wine. Not one boy tasted a drop from the glass of kiddush. In there, Israel, you have to be over 21 to be able to taste and drink your own bottle, and that was to the point. The rabbi's going to drink, that's why he's making kiddush. If they wanted you to drink, you would also make your own kiddush. Now, I think that's the extreme opposite spectrum, but I'll tell you that they are a pretty old school Jewish Lithuanian institution. If that's how they've been doing things, that's probably the way they've been doing things for a very long time. Hasidim come along, and their whole attitude to the world is, anything that you consider to be mundane, we can turn into something holy. Eating, you think, is all about eating. We'll tell you, eating is about getting stronger to serve Hashem. The Rambam mentions this, and Hasidim were the one who made the push for this. Rabbi Elimelech of Legends has in the back of one of his books, there's something called a Tzetel Katan, a small letter, in which he encourages you, don't go to sleep because you're tired. Go to sleep when you're tired and say, I'm going to sleep so tomorrow morning I could pray better and I could treat other people nicer, and I'll have turn it into a mitzvah, turn it into something holy. So I can imagine that Hasidim saw people drinking, everybody was drinking, and said, how can we make drinking into something holy? And then that spends all Shabbat and Kiddush and L'chaims and Fabringans and all kinds of things that come along with it. And I don't agree with that mentality, but it's very much a part of Hasidic philosophy, which is to take things that you would consider not holy or not special and turn it into something dedicated to the service of God. I obviously don't come from this background, and I'm generalizing when I say all Hasidim or all Lithuanians or all. In the countries that we came from, we never in our lives heard about people getting drunk on Purim, and I would argue that in Europe it was the same thing. I would argue, but I don't have proof. I would argue. Because if it was, you would have heard about it. You would have heard about those great parties happening in downtown Poland, wherever they're like getting drunk and the Jews are marching around the streets. You would have heard about it. I that's my. But I can't. The establishment is very interested in this whole drinking thing, and I'll tell you that the problem is not in whether or not you're fulfilling a mitzvah or not. The problem is what happens to people when they drink, and what damage can come to a Jewish community. See, where do we get the stereotype? We really don't. We drink like wine on Shabbat. You know, Jews today have all kinds of fancy liquor cabinets, but I don't know that was always a Jewish thing to, you know, the tavern was always owned by Ivan the Cossack, and you would go get a shot over there, and that's where you went to drink. Or you had the Jew who was owning a little pub for Ivan the Cossack, but you didn't have like Jewish pubs in Hungary. You know, it didn't work. That's not the way these things worked out. I'm a young rabbi, but in the few years that I have been a rabbi, I cannot tell you the devastating stories that have come to my desk or to my table or wherever I've been, of families that have been broken up because of alcohol abuse, or couples that have gotten, forget, divorce would have been nice, but what happened until divorce due to alcohol abuse, it brings out the worst in humanity. And I can't judge a person. Some people, it's like they can drink responsibly. I'm not here to talk about is there drinking responsibly and not drinking responsibly. Simply that there are dangers inherent to drinking alcohol, and regardless of what you will do with your life, we have to know about them. And the problem that we have today is quite the opposite stereotype. It's almost as if in Judaism, especially Orthodox Judaism, alcohol is the main focus of any Shabbat dinner or any holiday or any festivity or any birthday party or any. Some groups more than others, but many of them, this has become already a normative thing. Drinking, the Kiddush Club, the schnapps, all kinds of words. It's become a really big deal. You go to Jewish weddings and there are open bars. People pay $10,000 to have an open bar at their wedding, and you find guys that are drunk and run around the wedding. And at my wedding, I refused to serve alcohol.
Did you have wine?
No.
Nothing, not even.
At the chuppah, I had a bottle of wine. I didn't. I said, "You want to be happy? Be happy." And
Was your side okay with
I'm an
that?
extremist to the other end.
It's interesting because my grandson, who's being bar mitzvah this August, is so adamant he does not want any beer or wine. I mean, and he's going to be 13. He said, I don't want some people getting drunk and look stupid at my bar mitzvah. This is my celebration.
I was a bar mitzvah, was the oldest son of a Chabad rabbi, and the rabbi was doing cartwheels in the party. He was way over the top.
I was at a synagogue in Los Angeles for Simchat Torah one year, and the rabbi was drunk, passed out, laying on top of the table where you read the Torah, the bima,
Oh my
and his
God.
clothes were half out. I couldn't believe, like, what's the guy? So tomorrow morning you expect people to come and listen to your sermons again or your class? Like, I just don't.
Disgraceful.
No, it's
Was
okay.
it Jerusalem?
No, in Los Angeles, here in Los
That's
Angeles, I saw this.
disgraceful.
Now, why am I? My wife will argue that there's a holy drunk, and Rav Shlomo Kabach will argue there's a holy drunk, and listen, it's not my genre of Judaism, so forgive me that I'm not catering to it. But at my wedding, people still found a way to get drunk. They walked down the block to a liquor store and they smuggled bottles of alcohol, and you'll see one of the pictures over here with my wife's family. There's some guy on the floor with a crazy expression on his face. He was drunk. My father-in-law didn't want him in the picture. He said, I don't want people like that in my family picture. So it worked out with the other side. It worked out very well. My father-in-law agrees in the same regard.
A lot of these people have alcoholism, and they can't handle it.
So here is what I want to read. This is an article that was sent to
I'm
me.
so naive. I've never been exposed to people like that, I have to tell you. I mean, I saw it at Chabad and, I stayed an hour, I left, because it's mostly for kids. But, I don't know, I mean, I've had lots of parties. We serve alcohol, no one gets drunk. I've gone to bar mitzvahs and I've never seen
That's my
weddings
husband's
and
specialty
people,
is alcoholism.
but I've never seen anyone in the places I go get drunk.
So this is
I've seen a few.
I got this article.
My
So this article was
brother-in-law
sent to me
was
by
one
a
of my
Chabad friend of mine. from a Chabad website. COL Live is ChabadOnlineLive.com. You can put this in. It's called From and Sober in Crown Heights. Now this is not this topic is not specific to Chabad or Crown Heights, but I was actually impressed that somebody in the community was willing to write such an article because it's important. The subtitle is Yaakov Mark, a Baal Tshuva, meaning a returnee to traditional Judaism, and a recovering alcoholic, writes about the hardships of staying sober in a community like Crown Heights. So, whereas you've heard that Jews don't drink, he's telling you, as a recovering alcoholic, he had the most difficult time staying sober in the Jewish community. Let me read it to you a little bit. Becoming a Baal Tshuva in a yeshiva in Crown Heights was the best decision I ever made. I am learning more and more about Judaism every day, and I have grown so much. Sure, I learned a lot about myself on a 12-step recovery, and 4.5 years of sobriety is a major accomplishment for me. But let me tell you, it is nothing compared to the 24 hours a day of spiritual immersion I get here at this yeshiva. Hey, look at them.
I'm so tall.
Oh, and the Fabringans, and the Shalom Zachors, and the Bris Milas, and the weddings, and the Bar Mitzvahs, and the holidays, they're so wonderful. Everyone is so consumed with joy and festiveness and amazing inspiration, and everyone cares so much that you also are also having a good time.
To be fair, this is a unique Chabad problem, you should know.
I'm saying that it's not.
But
So
I'm telling you that it is, because take, for example, I'll give you Bell, Satmar, Bava, they don't ever drink. These are big Chassidim.
They don't make l'chaims ever?
No, Purim for sure they never drink. Even l'chaim, they don't give out to everybody. It's just the Rebbe says l'chaim and nobody drinks. It's stolen, everybody gets this much, not more. There's never this...
Chabad likes their
There is never an open bar.
At Shalom Zachors?
No.
There's no alcohol?
There is, but that's not Hasidic. That's everywhere in Jewry. Meaning,
so what? No, it's not everyone in Jewry. What I'm saying is, it's not uniquely Chabad though. Because if at Shalom Zachors people go for the beer.
No, but I have to disagree.
Young boys in their teens are encouraged to drink.
Yes, I'm going to read you an article. Let me read it. And the l'chaims as well. No Jewish gathering would be complete without mashka. Mashka is alcohol. Everyone toasts together, and even those that would perhaps go a little slower end up letting loose with a few shots under their belt. So what does a person do that doesn't drink? This is a difficult situation. Folks don't often get a glimpse of what it looks like from the vantage of the non-drinker. Yet for some reason, Jews often don't realize the dangerous boundaries they cross in the name of fellowship and love of their fellow. Here are some of my own personal experience that will shed a bit of light on the challenges of a non-drinker. First of all, it is important to realize that for me to drink is to return to a really messed up life. If I was to drink, more than likely, I would be sucked away from Judaism and probably end up in jail, a hospital, or a graveyard. It is that serious, and so I don't even touch a drop and haven't for nearly 5 years. I have found that there is constant encouragement everywhere you go to drink, whether it is making kiddush or going to a farbrengen. Baruch Hashem that I have the strength to follow through with my commitment to serve Hashem the best I can, yet I find it very difficult at times to hold back my resentment on this issue. On the one hand, it is a great annoyance to me. On the other hand, I cannot help thinking of how many Jews may have been turned away because of good intentions of trying to make me feel like one of the boys. I often get comments from folks when they find out I am sober and religious. One kid said I picked the wrong religion to be sober in. More recently, he confided to me that until he became religious, he didn't drink that often. A rabbi recently offered me many spiritual reasons why I should consider drinking again.
Oh my God.
To a recovering alcoholic. He told me how I have become so much more mature and I have so much more self-control that I should test the waters. He spent 30 minutes trying to corner me on the topic. He got quiet when I told him sarcastically that the first time I decide to test the waters will be at his house on Shabbat in front of his family. Often I have heard that it is important to drink vodka to farbrengen in order to subdue the animal soul, and this is unique to Chabad. And
now,
to be able...
One second, I just want to add what you said before about the Russian. It makes sense because the Russian Hasiduyot do drink a lot more. Nothing to do with Hasidic.
Yeah, but based on where they're from,
Right.
exactly.
I just have to say, on a very light note, I mean, I hate the man, but Donald Trump doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, and
He doesn't have to.
never
He's
took
crazy
any
without
drugs.
it.
He's just normally crazy.
He has all the inhibition without it.
And he has no tattoos. He reminds
So this is the reason you should drink is in order to subdue the animal soul and to be able to open up to each other. Yet I think about when the rabbis that wrote these ideas that perhaps they hadn't heard about the 12 steps. maybe, just maybe, the peace and tranquility I get from practicing the steps actually produce the same or better effect above and beyond that of vodka. One time I went to a Shabbat dinner where the grape juice bottle and the wine bottle, which were from the same company, got switched, which caused a slight accident for me during Kiddush. I was disgusted that even with all of my efforts to avoid, that wine had gotten past my lips and down my throat. Even if it was only a few drops, it was enough to make me feel as if I had been violated. That even though through my best efforts to prevent such a thing, it had become beyond my control one more time. This is a terrifying thought for an alcoholic like me. Yet I was reminded of what the AA Big Book said about cringing from alcohol as if it were a hot flame. My friend said that it was proof of my spiritual fitness and of working a good program. Another time I went to a Shalom Zachar. Do you know what a Shalom Zachar is?
Yeah.
In Ashkenazi communities, the Friday night after a baby boy is born, they hold a celebration in the parents' home. And the highlight of most Shalom Zachars, tell me that I'm wrong. Even in the Lithuanian community,
I've had thousands.
even in the Lithuanian community, is what kind of beer are they going to serve at the Shalom
Not
Zachar?
where I come from.
Okay.
Not really, in my community, maybe my community is unique, but.
And one of the
drinking is
hosts,
considered
one of the hosts was adamant that I drink with him. I said no, thank you, and he said, "Oh, but this is a great event. A Jewish baby was born today. You must drink." He hands me a Corona, and I push it away. He insisted more, so I grabbed it and put it on the table and asked my friend to take care of it. Of course, he misunderstands and opens it, pours a glass, and places it next to me. Then the host pours a shot of whiskey, and there I am staring at an ice-cold Corona and a shot of whiskey. This is a person who struggles with alcohol. Inside, I was fuming mad, but I decided that I could leave it on the table and be nice, but get out of there quickly. I should have loudly said no means no, because it felt like the type of controlling behavior one would get from a rapist. I had to expose my alcoholism in order to get him to stop, and of course, then came the jokes all night.
These are religious
You know,
people?
Wine was
Look
not
at
a
the
big
sky.
thing, at least in America, in the 60s, the 50s and 60s. It wasn't until the 70s that it started to be promoted through the Marvin Shankin and the Wine Spectator and all this and all that. And by the 80s, mid-80s, and certainly 90s, everyone had wine on their table. It wasn't a thing. And in fact, for Friday night dinners or whenever you had the Jewish thing for wine, we all grew up with it. It was sweet Manischewitz. I
right.
mean, you weren't getting drunk on that because you didn't want to drink it. I mean, it was, you know,
It
you
was
had a
cough
little...
syrup.
Yeah, you gave it to your babies because it was harmless. You know how your dad always gives them...
Right. So I'm done with this article, by the way. If you want to read the rest of it, you're more than welcome. But the sentiment of, forget it's for any other reason than you might have one person in your community that was once an alcoholic. And by putting out those drinks on the table at your next joyous occasion, you think that you're making everyone happy, but there's another person who's really struggling. There's another person there who struggles. I have in my own community people who are alcoholics. In the past they had struggles and they have been dry for a number of years, and the happiest thing they've ever told me is that this is the only synagogue they've been to in this entire city where celebration never includes alcohol. Now, I'm sure there are other people who have the equal complaint at me of, how come you never serve alcohol? You're being cheap with
No,
us?
you have
But-
alcohol.
but
You have wine on
we
your
have wine
on your
for Shabbat, for
table
Kiddush, and
But not enough to get drunk. I just want to share a story. I had a friend she was a classmate actually in post-high school. 3 years ago, her brother was 19, going collecting on Purim, which is the normal thing that people do. And he was at somebody's house. He had never drank. And the guy gave him a couple too many shots. 15 minutes later, he was dead. Dead. And recent. This is, I think, 3 years ago. And, you know, suddenly Purim went from En Hatzalah, which is the 911 for the Jewish community. Every year before Purim puts out manuals begging the people, don't give kids. You think it's funny when they're going to come to your house and they're going to drink one shot and they'll dance a little better. That's not the mitzvah of the holiday, to get drunk to the point that we're killing people, which literally happens every single year. The Maimonides, which is Brooklyn, the emergency room is always full of young kids. We're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are either in toxic shock or unfortunately dead by the time they get there. And, you know, I can't imagine that's the commandment. You know, even if you are commanded to drink, there's some people, like my husband said, they don't know how to drink, period. And
So have drugs arrived yet in the Orthodox community? All we're talking about is fanaticism and
you
alcohol.
want to know where to buy you when you're in New York? Is that your question?
I'm just curious. What's
I'm
the drug
sure.
thing? I mean,
I'm
there's
sure
no halakha against
That's not necessarily true. There are halachot against drugs. For Moshe Feinstein issued a famous letter about it. I would tell you that just like any other community, substance abuse is definitely an issue in the Jewish community, but it's considered. You're not going to go to a bar mitzvah and someone's going to put out. It's different than alcohol. It's considered a different addiction, a different kind of problem. And I'll tell you the truth. The truth is that I'm an extremist here, so it's not fair for me to expect everyone to do what I do. But I really, I had my brother got married, and they came to do a celebration at her house after the wedding. Now in the summer. And her father-in-law is he likes to make everybody happy. And part of what I guess makes Jews happy where he comes from is he went to Ralph's and bought out the entire Jewish liquor section and brought it to my house.
Oh.
And he's like, yeah, I got some for the synagogue, I got some for lunch, I got some for dinner, I got them for Saturday night, I got some. And I'll tell you the truth, it was a very hard thing because I was walking this tightrope of I offered to host a party for them. It's my brother and his new wife. It's a new family that we don't want to get off on the wrong foot. I took him aside and I said, I just have to tell you that in our family and in our house and in my community, that's not the way we do things. And he was very good about it. He was very good about it. And he took everything that he bought and left it in my garage.
Good.
And that was very respectful of him. He wasn't happy about it, but he was very, very good about it. And I appreciated that. Like I told you, by the wedding, my father-in-law was the first one to sign up with the no drinking clause. And he wasn't interested in it. And like I said, he didn't want...
They don't drink in her community.
Right. No, my father's also very... I have a brother who's an alcoholic, but I do. But my father's very dry. In my house, we never opened bottles. It's strange for me that I go to houses and people open bottles. We never had something like that. The only time you had the bottle was for kiddush.
And then it disappears from the table.
And then you take it off the table because there's no point in drinking.
No.
So what is this business about the animal soul that's what it encourages you
Okay,
to
great.
drink?
So I'm going to explain that in just 1 second. This is a great question. Yain, our rabbis tell us, the David HaMelech, King David says, Yain yisamach levav enosh. Wine will gladden a person's heart. And you see that from our rabbis, compared to all alcoholic beverages, wine is considered a respectable beverage. Meaning, if you were to drink alcohol, and you take a glass of red wine with your meat, or I don't know, whatever you do, you have a white wine over your dessert, it's not considered a bad or negative thing in Judaism. In fact, there are times where we have obligations to drink wine. On Kiddush, during holidays like Pesach, and we have an obligation to drink. Never to get, there's a difference between drinking a glass of wine or getting drunk. And our rabbi said, unlike if you drink a glass of whiskey or vodka, you're probably going to go crazy. Yeah, but wine is a different beverage. It's not. Its nature is not meant to get people drunk. Most people, when they're looking to get drunk, are not doing it on wine. In my experience, they're going to do it with something that'll just get to it much quicker. In fact, you get sick when you drink a lot of wine. There's a lot of things that come along with wine. Wine has a certain respectability to it. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov writes that every time you find drunk people in our Bible, in Tanakh, you find always something bad happens afterwards. If it's Noach and what goes on over there, if it's all kinds of places you find drunkenness, bad things are happening around drunk. People in drunk situations. Very good. That even worse. I mean, that was from wine. The Rambam, which I love the Rambam, but the Rambam suggests the following. And the Rambam's understanding of this piece of Talmud, and this seems to be definitely the Sephardic approach, and not just the Sephardic approach. Not just. Many Ashkenazi communities as well. In fact, when I was younger, I remember Rabbi Hollander teaching this as the halakha in school. So, I don't know what he does in his shul and but I remember him teaching me this the first time I ever heard it. The Rambam says that you should drink a little more than you usually drink. Meaning, if at Kiddush, on Friday night, you drink this much wine, drink that much wine. A little more than you usually drink, and after your meal, go take a nap. Take a nap. Because normally when you drink, you get a little bit tired. He says, take a nap, wake up a little bit later. He says, and then, in the time that you were sleeping, you actually didn't know the difference between Mordechai and Haman, and that's what our rabbi said intended. This is the Rambam's understanding of what happened. I have a letter here from the rabbis of Yemen when they came to Israel, and they said this was the understanding of this mitzvah entirely. That was what they did for thousands of years. They never heard of another alternative, and they said it's ludicrous to expect that another interpretation would be given. So why am I talking about this? I almost feel like I'm upset that I have to spend even time as a Jew speaking about such a topic to other Jews. But where you go and the things that you see, and I'm not judging anybody who likes their shot and their beer. I'm not judging. But sometimes just realize there are people that are not able to handle it like you're able to handle it. There are people that really have problems. I've had to walk drunk boys home from bars as a time.
They have the
I had a
key
student.
for addiction.
I had a student that I used to take to AA meetings when he was in yeshiva. I used to take him twice a week to an AA meeting in Jerusalem. The boy wanted help, and he was in the wrong environment to get help. And I came from yeshivot where drinking was not a thing. My brothers were not that. I have a brother who went to yeshiva. Yes, it was a Chabad yeshiva. And at 14 years old, they're pushing shots on the boys every other night of the week. And it's in the name of holiness. So now let me tell you about the animal soul.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
It's so refreshing to see the two of you feel this way about alcohol. It really is.
Thank
at
you.
your age. It's really refreshing.
But to be fair, my husband's more extreme than me.
In general, I'm more
In
extreme
general,
than you.
but I definitely.
I'm with you. It's just for me refreshing to see a young person.
My attitude has always been, it's playing with fire. Yes, there are people that might be able to drink, but I've seen the ugly side of this coin, and you probably have. That's what your husband. I've seen the ugly side, and the question is, why even poke the bear? I don't understand. But I understand that some people have a palate and they have a taste for it. I'm not judging, like I told you. So my wife is less extreme than I am. But at the end of the day, we have to be very honest about what, if we tell people that they can't do all kinds of things because they might be dangerous according to Jewish law. For example, how many of you who keep kosher are careful about not putting fish and meat on the same plate? Yeah? Even though our rabbis tell us that it's not dangerous anymore. It used to be dangerous. Our rabbis said if people had fish and meat on the same plate, they would actually die from it. And when that no longer became a thing, nobody's dropping dead from it. So why do you still do it? Tradition. But if our rabbis felt that it was dangerous, and our rabbis, Hashem says you must guard your soul extremely well, and the Rambam says how safe must you keep yourself? The Rambam says that you are not allowed to stab an etrog with a knife. This is an example. What's wrong with stabbing an etrog with a knife? When you travel on a picnic and you have to take a knife with you, so how do you normally package the knife so it doesn't stab anybody? You wrap it up in something, or you put it in something. Many people put it like in a fruit. That way it won't come out the other end. So the Rambam says you cannot stab a knife into a fruit because maybe the fruit will roll and will fall off the table, and the knife will poke through, and someone will run by, and they will trip, and they'll fall on the knife, and they'll get hurt. Says the Rambam, that's how far removed you must stay from anything dangerous. This is our rabbi's attitude. And so in general, you're talking about something that there are much fewer steps between drinking and going into a dangerous space. How much more so would our rabbis not encourage such a thing? And the fact that it's become a part of many groups of Judaism is a dangerous thing. You mentioned about the animal soul. Like I told you, the Hasidic movement in general spent much of its efforts trying to sanctify things that were otherwise not. Like I mentioned from Rabbi Elimelech of Lezhensk, sleep should be for the service of Hashem, not to get yourself the hours that you need in bed. If I can pitch that drinking is meant to subdue a part of your soul, it fits part and parcel with a certain theology, not generic Hasidic theology, but a very specific kind of Hasidic theology. I'm sure that someone has pitched it to him. I was once reading a book called My Encounters with the Rebbe by Mr. Jaffe, or Rabbi Jaffe. It's a book of his. He's a very wealthy man from England, I believe, who had a long time relationship with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he once brought to the Lubavitcher Rebbe a whole case of the duty-free bottles of vodka to give out to the Hasidim at the Farbrengens. And he brought it to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he said, I'm donating this to you to hand out at the next celebration you have here in 770 in New York. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe said, please take it back. And I am not. This is from a Chabad book printed by Chabad Publishing in New York. I found it in Chabad here in the neighborhood. And the Rebbe says, I can't trust people with drinking that much alcohol. He says, please take it back. They get too rowdy with it. Okay, so Rebbe, I'll donate it to you. You can drink it. And the Rebbe says, I don't like drinking.
Well, they have so many restrictions,
I feel uncomfortable telling you that Chabad drinks when I know that the Lubavitch Rebbe didn't like it. So if it's a problem in that community, I don't believe it started with the Rebbe. And it plays a more permissive. You're right. It's one of the few things people are allowed to let loose with in that community, and it's a problem. But on this note, just please be aware of this Purim. You see people drinking, you see people getting drunk. It's not the place you should be celebrating Purim. And you are allowed to make a stand. You're allowed to ask, what is this community's policy on drinking on Purim? And take a stand on it. If you're quiet about it, we're being passive in allowing things to happen to the community that are very dangerous.
But you know what happens? What happens is someone will go somewhere and you'll see all these people maybe drinking, or they look rowdy, or they look drunk, and no one says anything, but you just leave quietly. And you get back into the car and you go, that wasn't for us. And you don't go back.
Right. You're right.
That's exactly
You're right, Paula.
what happens.
Right?
Right? You know? I mean, we go places, we see people doing certain things, we stay a half an hour and we go, you want to go? Yeah.
Not
Get
for-
back in the car.
The challenge, though, Paulette, is everyone could struggle. The question is, do you then tag the struggle onto something holy and religious, or do we say, no, we happen to struggle, and as humans, we're all allowed to struggle. When we turn it into something, this is what Purim is, then
Well,
it
who
becomes
sets the
dangerous.
standard of that?
Right.
Well, I mean,
So
you
the
really have to
standard-
say who sets the standard. Is the rabbi? Is it the person that,
Right.
you know,
You're right.
who is it? I think it's got to be the head rabbi, because everybody defers really to the head rabbi. I mean, the head rabbi has 4 sons. The sons defer to the head rabbi, and so it trickles down to the average Joe Schmo who walks in from the street for
You're
Purim.
right. You're right.
For sure.
No.
So what do? You go to the head rabbi and you say,
what if
and
he-
is
what
it
if he's
okay?
down here?
I mean, if you think about it, it's a dilemma, because who would you listen to? Let's say somebody came into one of your whatevers, you know, and there was something they didn't like, or they had an opinion, and you never really saw them very often. They weren't a donator, they weren't a member, you know, they showed it every now and then, they showed up, and now here they're knocking on your door, telling you the way. Would you really listen? You know, so it's challenging, because people tend to collect around them people that are somewhat like-minded, or I can live with this, or this
Sure,
is okay
sure.
for
Would you-
me.
I'm not sure that
And
you'll
the rest
actually
disappear.
make that difference. But you know, we're doing Purim this year in my community, and there will not be alcohol served there, and I'm not for
You've
1
done it
minute
before
embarrassed.
Chabad, and it was no alcohol
Sure,
either.
and
What if
Yeah.
they brought it in? Would you say something?
Like the same thing that happens to me when people bring me bottles of vodka or whiskey or this to my Shabbat meal. I always say, no, thank you very much. I don't really have a use for this. Please take it home with you when you go. And I've never said otherwise, and that's my standing policy. And the few people that have managed to leave it by my door, I have a cabinet right here that has never been touched. If anybody wants to take something home with them, you're more than welcome. But
We had even my brother, who this is like family, you know, he brought up bottles to the shul, and my husband said, look, in our shul we don't drink, so just take it home with you. And it doesn't matter who you are, you still can't break those rules.
we're not Mormons. It's just, you know,
Right,
we're...
and again, we
Goes
have
against your principles.
right.
Yeah, and then we'll go to
I'll
a
tell-
Chabad.
I'll tell you, we had when I was in yeshiva, I have to tell you what grade I was in. Where was I sitting in the room? I was in 10th grade. In 10th grade, there was a boy who used to sit next to me. And he was in 9th grade. And I went home for Sukkot vacation. I went to my parents. I came back. And this boy wasn't there anymore. He didn't come back to yeshiva. It turns out that he was walking home from synagogue with his family on Sukkot. He was crossing the street in a normal crosswalk and a green light, you know, when we were allowed to cross. And a drunk driver came out of nowhere and ran him over and killed him.
Oh.
And the drunk driver was just released from prison a few days before for drunk driving. And so we wrote a book in the yeshiva dedicated to his life, and I wrote an article in the book, and you know, we put out. But I'll never forget that 1 minute the person was here with us, praying with us, and the next day he wasn't. And I can't tell you that it was for a good reason. You know, I've had friends that, you know, they went out and they were in war and they died and they were soldiers in the Israeli army or whatever it was. I don't think it's a good thing either, but I can tell you at least he went down for a noble cause that he could write on his tombstone. You know, he was he was just crossing the street. He was a victim of someone else's addiction that we're still enabling and still allowing and still haven't rehabilitated. And okay, so that's what the world does. I can't control the world, but in our communities, we hold ourselves to a higher standard. We're a light unto the world, Are we really? In this regard, are we really?
In your own little community, you
Well,
are.
we're just human.
And
We're just
so
human when we abide by a different set of thinking and rules than
Standards,
maybe other
yeah.
people's standards. Yeah,
so I
we're
think
no different.
I
Our
think that we
metabolism inside is the same as somebody else's.
nobody argued about our metabolism being different, but I argue that we should be able to hold ourselves to higher standards, and I do expect from our communities to act in a different way and to set an example for other people, and that's what I have to say about drinking on Purim. There's another thing on Purim. That people dress up and there are a lot of costumes, and it's okay. This is, again, like I told you, a purely Eastern European custom that we've accepted because it's harmless. It's a nice custom.
You dress up, don't you?
Yeah, over the years we've dressed up. To make sure that when you dress up, it's in the spirit of Purim. I can't tell how many devils I meet up, like Satan incarnated sitting in my Megillah reading, or how many priests show. They're not really, they're all dressed up or how many inappropriate costumes. It was found in the adult section in Party City, and some. What are you doing wearing this to the city? Something that I don't really understand. You want to dress up like Mordechai, like Esther. You want to dress up like some noble guy. Fine. The spirit of Purim has to be retained in these customs. It's not a Jewish Halloween. This is a different holiday, and even more than that, there's a prohibition in our Torah. It's one of the 613 commandments of a man not dressing like a woman and a woman not dressing like a man. There are reasons given for these halachot, but it suffices to say it's a very basic Jewish practice that men don't. I'm not allowed to put on a skirt even if I wanted to. Whatever it would be that falls into male and female clothing.
Which is interesting because that does change based on time and place.
It does change. But, for example, remember we studied together once about pants and halakha?
Yes.
And I showed that even though the mainstream Orthodox practice that women don't wear pants, that the argument is no longer that it's man's clothing, because there are pants today that if a man would wear, he'd be wearing a woman's clothing. It's already, time has changed, and therefore, for example, if you'd go to places where they wear kilts, that wouldn't be in violation of wearing, because over there that's what men wear, and it's a very subjective law depending on where you are and the places you're in. There are some halachic opinions, and I'll tell you why you don't follow them. What if I come to your house and I am so drunk that I break the window of your car? Who has to pay for the window of your car?
You do.
I do, right? That's basic Jewish law. That's in Rabbi Yosef Kairo's Shulchan Aruch. There are authorities who say that on Purim, due to the levity of the day and the joy of the day, if I break your window on Purim because I'm drunk, I don't have to pay for it.
No.
Yeah.
That sounds like
Yeah.
such nonsense.
That's the sugar.
Wait, now understand where I'm going to go with this. Those same rabbis, and you know many of them who follow this opinion, have pushed the envelope further. Well, because of that, Jewish law doesn't really apply on Purim. And they allow themselves to dress up like women, or all kinds of... we had 2 years ago in San Diego, one of the big rabbis here who spent his career making sure that I am not able to teach in different places. He dressed up he dressed up like a prostitute for Purim. He wore the shortest skirt I've ever seen in my life, and some kind of stockings and gloves and a wig and all that. But forgive me, he's the super Orthodox one in this town, and I have to tell you that these things they're not acceptable. They're not acceptable. And forgive me that Purim is a day of holiness. It's a day of joy. It's a day of celebrating Esther and Mordechai and what we did and the good that came out to our community. And it can't be that someone's going to come for the first time. They're going to bring them to synagogue and services, and this is what they're going to see. It's just almost... Should I tell you, we're having a bad effect, not just on Jews. I was at the costume shop last year with my wife, and there was a whole church in there buying costumes. Because they're celebrating Purim too in Chula Vista, a church from Chula Vista. And they say, well, if the rabbis wear these costumes, we're going to wear them. No, they're not. They're Christians for Christianity. But they say, hey, how come we're not celebrating one of the holidays? So they're now doing Purim. And they hold costume parties.
They had last year's theme was space aliens, so they were all, yeah.
I think the Jews really, really miss out on Halloween. Everybody else gets to do their thing.
So we do our Purim
thing.
thing.
Show up with their costumes like the devil and whatnot.
No, my wife had an uncle, Alav Shalom. I never got to meet him, but when we were dating, he was pushing a lot that we should stay together. And by the time we actually ended up getting married, he had already passed away. And so I lost out on the opportunity to meet him, but my wife has hundreds of hours of his lectures and his tapes. He was an expert in Chassidut, in the teachings and the philosophy of Chassidut, ranging from the lighter side of Chassidut and its commentaries on text and customs to the deeper, more Kabbalistic side of Chassidut. He was the expert. He gave hours and hours and hours of classes, and it from what I understand, was what you would call a real chassid. If you wanted to know who was real, this was the real deal. And he has hours of lectures on different Jewish customs and why we eat Haman Tashin, the triangle cookies, and why they're called Haman's ears, and why da-da-da. And okay, I'm putting all that aside for just a minute and sharing an idea with you. There's a letter that was put out in the early 50s, 60s by a group of Yemenite rabbis that argued that, yes, it's true, Haman, do you know why it's a triangle cookie? Haman didn't actually have triangle ears or a triangle hat. He didn't. The Talmud says that Haman, what really knocked him down was he saw the three pillars of the Jewish world, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The three, and those three overpowered him, and that's where the story of Purim happens. And because of that, in Europe, they developed a very distinct custom of having triangle cookies. Now, over the years, in Yiddish, they call them Haman Tashin, which is Haman's hat. In Hebrew, they call them Oznei Haman, Haman's ears. Yeah, they've gotten different names, again, only from the European Jewish community. In the Sephardic community, we also have such foods, but interestingly enough, they're not cookies. This concept of having a filling covered up with dough is because the whole spirit of the holiday is Hashem is hidden. He's revealed, but only on the inside. And on the surface, you don't find Hashem's name in the Megillah. This is a very undercover miracle. So Jews in Europe had this custom of the Haman Tashin. You have a little bit of the filling that shows, but really most of it is covered up with dough. That's why many Ashkenazim eat kreplach. Kreplach, you know kreplach? Like dumplings, the meat covered with dough. These are like a wonton. There you go. And it's an early Jewish Chinese food, and this is something that it's to symbolize this. Now, in the Sephardic communities, like in Morocco, they used to bake challah, and inside of the challah was a hard-boiled egg, covered up with challah. And the idea was we also had foods that were covered. Such concept. It's not just a European concept. The name, though, Haman Tashin or Oznei Haman, that you would name something that you put in your mouth after an evil person like Haman, was off-putting to many Jews, especially the Sephardic ones. I'm going to tell you, my wife's uncle has hours of classes. Why is it called Haman's ears? And there's a lot of, I'm not taking away. But the rabbi in this book suggests perhaps we should call them Purim cookies and not Haman's ears. Why would you want to put Haman's ears in your mouth? And, it's to bring again a certain, and now where I think it's a detail. But I think that the point he's trying to get at is, let's turn Purim into something holy again. Get back to the holiness of the sanctity of the day. It's a Jewish holiday. It's not a festival of Looney Tunes. It's something really powerful and something really special. It starts with, drinking. If you're going to drink a little bit and go to sleep. If you're going to be like me, don't drink at all. Just, I'm going to go to hell with you. It's okay. Don't drink at all. And if you're talking about dressing up, so dress up, fine. Maybe make sure that it's something modest, it's something fitting, it's something that looks like a Purim spirit, it's respectable. And to make sure the things that you eat in Purim, they fall into the category of things that we should eat and drink on Purim, the words that we say in Purim. It's an important holiday that really changes the way we celebrate Judaism in our exile. I wanted,
This is just a comment, but Judaism says you're supposed to protect your soul, you're supposed to protect your body. When you drink alcohol, you kill your liver cells, you kill your brain cells. It's very not healthy for you. So, there's no way anyone could really ever really condone it. And the second thing I want to say was on Shabbos, Vori gave a talk about what it really means. Is it something that you wanted to talk about now or
Sure. We had an interesting class on all the laws of drinking, so we had really two different camps, which is what we talked about. Those who say no, drinking when it says drinking to the extent of not differentiating between Aro Haman, right, cursed is Haman, and blessed Mordechai, that's what it means. The other camp says, God forbid, and the example I gave was, God forbid, if you took somebody who was a Holocaust survivor, right, and you asked them, was Hitler, his name should be obliterated, right? Was he a good person? How drunk would somebody have to be to say yes? The answer is probably there is no limit. Somebody who's gone through the Holocaust, I mean, as drunk as they will be, their psyche will never tell you Hitler was a good guy. So the other camp of rabbis say it cannot be that it means literally, because to get to that point it doesn't exist. So the deeper understanding on both ends was drinking takes away boundaries, right? It makes us uninhibited. Comes Purim, it's a day where suddenly we want those boundaries to fade. We do. We want, you live in your house, I live in mine, where you live two separate lives, two separate worlds. I do my own thing. Purim is a day where the crux of the issue was Haman comes and says, there's a nation, there's one single nation that's spread out. Their weakness is they don't have unity. And you find to the contrast when Esther says, Mordechai, lech kenos et kol haYehudim, go gather the Jews. Because the first way to fight evil is come and unite. And I know you touched on that last week, come and unite. And therefore what the wine does is, it doesn't necessarily make you forget who Haman and Mordechai were, but the lines become blurry. The things that you thought were good and evil, suddenly they become gray. And for one day a year, we say, let's put aside those definitive boundaries, the logic of, well, it's right, it's wrong, and let's see a beautiful tapestry of a world. Let's see a world where things all do blend in to create a bigger picture. And for one day a year, we want to get to that place where not just between man and man those barriers fall, but also between man and God, where I can have so many complaints and so many things that I, don't add up to my logic. But comes a day of Purim, we say, what? When I love somebody so deeply, does it really matter if the socks go into the right laundry basket? Does it really matter if the cap doesn't go back onto the toothpaste? It does. Those are good things to do. But not when you're so much in love. And that's really the essence of not just Purim, but the drinking element, which it helps that process. It helps that process of being able to pull that doesn't like that help.
I don't buy that.
But that is the explanation of the rabbis who say go ahead and drink.
Yeah, I don't
Go
buy
ahead
that.
and
I don't buy that.
Okay, that's fair.
Better to retrain your mind to think to yourself every single time you're about to criticize someone for taking the cap off the toothpaste or not putting it back on. Think to yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to have a relationship?
True, but it goes back to the premise is wine innately evil? And that's, again, we would differ on that, where I don't think it's
it's
evil.
innately evil.
I think it's something that if you access it right, if you use it right, and again, getting drunk and vomiting in the street is clearly not right. That's clearly not right.
And I think
when you get to a place of, that warmth that gives you that little tipsiness, I don't think that necessarily it's a bad thing.
The only thing is
you'll do it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
But you can't unite over that because one drink, for me, I could have one big drink and I, just go to sleep happy, and someone else has, 4 and they're loud and obnoxious. So,
so that's why it's very individual, the amount of drinking. For sure. There is no blanket
Some people
state.
don't know when to stop, though. That's
I grew up in a house.
Right.
I grew up in a house where my father didn't drink at all. Still doesn't drink at all. He only started doing kiddush on wine in my later years in life
he
because
drinks wine and he gives it a little bit to
but he prefers really to do kiddush on grape juice, which is why I don't know if you know this. In my house, according to Rabbi Peretz's teachings, kiddush should be done on wine, not on grape juice. And according to halakha, if my father is at my table, my father is supposed to do kiddush and not me, regardless if I'm the rabbi or if I'm he has precedence over me to do kiddush. He doesn't do it because he doesn't want to drink wine. And so he lets me do the kiddush because he would rather not do it that way. I grew up in that kind of house, and it wasn't out of any. My dad just doesn't like the taste. He doesn't like. He
wouldn't have wine and grape juice instead.
So he knows that I prefer to do kiddush on wine, just for the mitzvah of the wine, and so we worked out. It's okay, Baruch Hashem. It's a good compromise. When I started going to Jewish events, and especially in the circles that you've mentioned, I cannot tell you how much pressure I was under to drink, and to push you to drink, and at least one l'chaim, and at least and my argument always was simply what Paul said. I could be just as happy as you are without drinking. Simchat Torah.
Right.
Simchat Torah is my favorite holiday. It's my favorite holiday. Other people, I don't know what they're so happy about. I spend my whole life trying to study Torah. I spend my day studying Torah, my night studying Torah, teaching Torah, writing Torah. That's what I try to do. So I get one time a year to actually dance with the Torah. That's my favorite holiday. If I need to drink in order to be happy, that means that I'm not really happy with the Torah, and I need something else to help me out. I said every year, Simchat Torah. especially in the days when I didn't have my own Simchat Torah, I had to do it with other people. There's, oh, that was so nice. You must be so drunk. I said, I promise you that I didn't even make Kiddush tonight. I mean, I didn't even drink water yet. I have not had anything. I just love this holiday. And nobody believes me. I don't know if you ever see me. I let loose on Simchat Torah. There are ways, if you truly appreciate something, if you truly love something, if you're truly happy at a wedding, you don't need those shots to be happy. In general, you need a crutch when you don't have another way to express your joy. When you don't have another... Okay, listen, it's like a little kid. You tell them, come with me to shul. I don't want to go to shul. But they give out candies. Okay, I'll come. Right? You don't want to go your whole life to the synagogue because someone's going to give out you a candy. I mean, that's...
So here's what surprised me. I can't remember what you have in your cup, but at Shabbat dinners we'll go to rabbi dinner or something, and the men will be given, a cup, probably about up to here, filled with wine, and they do the bracha, and it's in their right hand, and they're expected to down that whole thing. And I always think to myself, well, we don't do that. If we make Shabbat dinner, we have a little Kiddush cup, tiny. We each take a sip and pass it around, and that's that. If we want wine, we pour our own glass of wine in our wine glass. But they're required, it seems. Do you do that? I can't remember what's in your cup. Grape juice or...
I drink wine. I do wine.
Yeah.
And I drink... there's an amount of wine you have to drink.
These,
no, but nobody else.
You know what I'm talking about. They are like, they make the bracha, and it's a big silver Kiddush cup.
And a
You've
white
seen that.
goat.
And they down the whole thing.
Oh no!
And it had water in there. They down the whole thing. They down the whole thing. And it's like, oh my God, what is that?
Terrible.
I don't know.
So let me tell you, and the reason why I shared, I want to apologize.
It was a visual demonstration.
Yeah, I didn't realize I had a little bit of water in there.
I want to apologize to my wife. I asked her to go to shul to get me a book, and I didn't actually end up using it today. So forgive me for sending you there. And the bottom line of the story.
Did we make you laugh? Yes. What?
Are you grumpy today?
No, I'm messy today.
The bottom line of the story for me is, especially in insular communities such as the Jewish community, we generally sweep problems under the rug. And that means that even if we will have a person who is an alcoholic, they won't necessarily get the help they need to get. Because of stigmas, because of you can solve it. Just now I was talking to somebody who was telling me, depression? Yeah, just tell them to suck it up and be a real person. Are you serious? I mean, there's the chemical imbalances going on. There are psychological issues that need to be taken care of. That mentality is, forgive me if I'm offending anybody, that mentality is like 100 years old. We're in a different planet
yet
today.
Jewish Family Service advertises all over. What is it? That Sarah's thing?
Yeah, Sarah's alterations.
On the back, in the women's restrooms and the stalls and everything for abuse.
Yes.
So,
And the first time I saw that, I went, couldn't believe that.
For sure.
And it is everywhere.
Yes, it is.
so I'll tell you the story. The story is that I was once in Jerusalem at a Friday night dinner, and there was a girl at this Friday night dinner. I was running these big meals over there, and there was one of these girls that came, a little older than me, and I asked her, "What is like? You must have a story. What's the story?" This girl told me that she was married for exactly 7 days.
Oh my.
7 days, an Orthodox Jewish girl, and she was married. Her husband comes home the first night from his Sheva Brachot, from these the celebrations they do for the bride and the groom, drunk. Came home drunk and started hitting her. First night, second night, third night, fourth night, fifth night, sixth night. She reached out to somebody. Oh, you must be imagining things. Oh, by the seventh night, her brother showed up, took her out of the house. It took them like a year to get a get from this guy. But they said, oh yeah, he's the best guy in the whole yeshiva, this attitude. Now, this boy, I'm going to tell the truth, aside from being a cruel and terrible person, this guy, if I have to guess, until today probably has never gone to help, not for his drinking problem, not for his abuse problem, not for his, because there is no such...
Because there's no problem.
There's no problem. It's not a problem.
I don't have a problem.
And there's also not this, when you go to a therapist, go to a psychologist, in some communities you can't say that to somebody. It's just not going to happen. The family won't let. They're going to cover it, whatever it is. And this is a problem, especially in our community, we have to be careful of, because I know that in other communities, people sometimes get the help that they need. But in our communities, not everyone gets the help that they need. And because of that problem, you have to be double careful than you are anywhere else with these things. And I'm asking you, make a little commotion, make a little bit of noise. I'm asking you to make promises. Let people know that this is not okay. We're not going to have another Purim, and more kids are going to check the news on Purim morning from New York. Check the news. There will be car accidents. There will be boys in the hospital from alcohol poisoning. There will be people who are lost. They're missing for the next 2 days.
You're in San Diego too, you think?
No, we're not so not in San Diego.
Not as crazy,
But you could put in the news. Go to one of the Jewish news websites from the East Coast. Every Purim I check, there's always kids missing. There's always someone in a car accident. There's always people who died. There's always for what? For what reason? Our rabbis, I promise you, did not. And as a person who spent my life studying everything that our rabbis say, this idea does not fit in with everything else that our rabbis told us. And so if there are people who believe that this is a rabbinic teaching, they're just mistaken. The problem is on them. They have a lack of understanding on how to interpret Jewish text, and don't be a partner to it. Let it change. Let the world be better. And come, Purim, you want to see Purim with holiness, you're welcome to join us. It's
Why
on
don't you
me.
write an
Bezrat
article
Hashem.
about that?